All right, so let's talk about the ongoing Israeli-Gaza war and kind of go through it here, compiled using Zero Hedge. Nice clean interface as always. So the Syrian army, this is as of 3:12 p.m. Eastern. So, well, actually, I guess it's 4 Eastern. So the Syrian army has fired missiles towards occupied Golan Heights Tuesday evening. Breaking reports indicate the Israeli Defense Force have confirmed the attack. A number of launches from Syria aimed for Israel identified a short while ago. Parts of the launches crossed into Israeli territory and presumably fell into open areas, which means that nothing was hit. This raises the risk of a broader conflict, which spirals given the earlier exchange and fire from northern Lebanon between Israel and likely Hezbollah positions. Al Jazeera's senior correspondent Zinia Kodor writes on the significance of the Golan mortar fire from Syria. Rocket fire from Syria lands in Israel-occupied Golan Heights. It was a matter of time before messages sent to Israel from this front, multi-front assault possible. So, is this like a threat from the Syrian government? Is this them warning of what might happen if it's the Syrian government and Hezbollah and Lebanon, they have a lot more missiles than the Palestinians do. So presumably this is them saying, hey, if we go to war, Iron Dome can't keep you safe from all of that. So what would be the outcome of there? We haven't ever seen that. Nobody's ever really tried. It's always been a somewhat constrained event when the two of these countries fight. Even Israel somewhat stays back instead of going all out. So could we be seeing a change? Let's hope not. Let's hope that somehow we prevent this from escalating. This came within an hour of President Biden in a speech confirming that the U.S. will begin surging defense aid to Israel, because why not? Let's have more war. My personal thought is that it looks like the Russo-Ukraine war is over. I think Russia has won that effectively. I think the Ukrainians are not attempting to push on at all anymore. I think it's done. I think the Russians have what they want, and so that war is ending. Right on cue, we have another war to finance. And this one's going to move into Iran, the big one, the one they've wanted for decades now. They've been wanting to go after Iran ever since Bush labeled them the axis of evil. And so now we're finally going to get that chance that Wesley Clark warned us about so many years ago, that they want to go after Iran. All right, and the Pentagon, too, confirmed, quote, a senior defense official said that the Pentagon was surging support to its closest Middle Eastern ally in response to what U.S. officials have said are the brutal new tactics that characterized the weekend assault by Hamas militants into southern Israel. With the combined death toll exceeding 1,500, Israel's government on Monday ordered a full-scale siege of the Gaza Strip, setting the stage for what could be a prolonged and bloody offensive in the small, densely populated Palestinian enclave. It's already begun, says Boeing. This is interesting. So Boeing accelerated delivery of 1,000 smart bombs to Israel as the country steps up retaliation against Hamas. Because that's what you need to fight. I mean, look, I'm totally on board with removing Hamas. But bombing a whole bunch of civilian infrastructure and buildings, not really necessary to that end. And it doesn't really stop the war. And so 1,000 new smart bombs, that's just 300 or so buildings that are about to be demolished, because it takes between, three or four missiles usually to take out one building. So let's see. All right. So as of 1:10 Eastern time, the Israeli army has reportedly issued an order for civilians to evacuate the Tula settlement, which lies just along the northern border with Lebanon. This after a salvo of some 15 rockets was fired from southern Lebanon in a suspected Hezbollah operation. In response to the launches identified from the Lebanese territory towards Israeli territory, IDF soldiers are currently responding with artillery fire. Regional sources report the IDF said that intercepted several of them, while most landed in open fields. So things are steadily escalating there, and we have a senior Israeli officer was killed in a confrontation with militants on the frontier with Lebanon on Monday. And this is in response. The Israeli military said said troops and aircraft killed 2 terrorist infiltrators who'd crossed into Israeli territory. Palestinian Islamic Jihad claimed that they were its members. Later, at least 3 members from Lebanon's Hezbollah movement were killed as the military attacked sites in Lebanon in response to mortar fire. So it's not exactly clear what happened first. Who fired the first shot? Was it the Lebanese? Was it the Israelis? They don't really say. Still, both Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah have thus far narrowly avoided a spiral into all-out war with the Israel-Lebanon border. What's happening here seems to be a kind of contained tension. Lebanon is not yet a war zone, however, it's an area of operation, but it seems it is also space for both sides to exchange messages, an Al Jazeera correspondent Ali Hasham has observed, which is interesting because, so we've had attacks on both sides, we've had deaths on both sides, but neither side really wants to push this forward because the last time the two of these countries fought, it was bloody on both sides and both sides suffered, and they don't really want to go through it again. It's only going to get worse this time, and if Iran gets brought into it, all hell breaks loose. I mean, if it's all three, if it's Iran, Syria, and Lebanon, they really don't have much reason. If Israel decides to push it to the max, what are they going to do? Push it to the max as well. What does that mean? That means hundreds of thousands, millions of civilians dead on both sides. This is what we want. Iran, meanwhile, has been on the defensive after major U.S. media, especially the Wall Street Journal, cited U.S. sources who alleged Tehran supported, funded, and helped plan Hamas's deadly rampage across the southern Israel on Saturday. There's speculation that the Iranians fear Israel's Netanyahu government could be targeting sites inside of Iran. A regional source reports on Tuesday on the unprecedented softening of rhetoric from Iran's leadership related to Hamas as Israel follows. So this is interesting. I mean, I don't think Iran really wants a war, and I think it's certainly possible they financed it. But it's not, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to find that out. And I also wouldn't be surprised. I would a tiny little bit, though, in some ways, because Hamas are Sunni, Iran is Shiites. So I don't know why the Shiites would care much. Iran's supreme leader has strongly rejected any involvement in the Hamas movement surprise attack on Israel. The public maneuvering, which involves Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, striking repeatedly his rejection of an Iranian role 3 times in a 90-second span, follows a controversial claim in U.S. media that Tehran helped plan the October 7th blitz. Speaking on condition of anonymity, a high-ranking Iranian source told Amwajai Media that Khamenei's remarks, his first since the Hamas offensive, may have been sparked by him seeing the direction of the Israeli public diplomacy campaign, rejecting concerns of an impending Israeli attack as Khamenei's underlying motive. The source said the supreme leader's comments are preemptive as opposed to reactive, addressing the rare decision by Khamenei to be so vocal in his rejection of an Iranian role in the Palestinian blitz. A second senior source in Tehran told Mouajeh Media, Give me one reason why he should do otherwise. Also, speaking anonymously, given the sensitivity of the matter, he concluded, why should one give them the perfect justification they need for an attack? At the same time, the source dismissed the notion that being so explicit in rejecting a role in the Hamas attack indicates a sense of weakness on the part of Iran. Again, I don't really see how much there is a weakness there because Iran is not really that much of a friend of the Palestinians. They are opposition to each other. Sunnis consider Shiites to be heretics. Much like Hamas and ISIS are not actually friends with each other and they hate each other, there's infighting between different sects of Islam. And they're quite violent towards each other. Sunnis being far more violent towards the Shiites than the reverse. So I don't see, it's weird to me to think that they would have that much interest here. Plus, Shiites don't care about Jerusalem like Sunnis do. In rare public maneuvering, Iran's leader explicitly rejects any role in Hamas's attack 3 times in 90 seconds. That's just a repeat of the information above. The Pentagon has meanwhile warned both Iran and Hezbollah against jumping into the conflict in a fresh statement, as if they care. Let's be honest here. We all know why Hamas was willing to do it. It's because Biden is in office. They don't have to worry too much. Biden's not really going to do anything of significance. And if he does, it'll be feckless. Look what happened in Afghanistan. There's a standard here. Biden is weak. That is known. You know, if anything, the part of the thing that made Trump what he was is nobody was really sure what he would actually do. The dude threatened to nuke Moscow. He threatened to nuke Beijing if their respective leaders got out of line. And even if there's just a 5% chance that might happen, you're treating that dude seriously, which they did. So, I gotta say, if Trump was in office, this wouldn't have happened. Like, let's be real here. The senior U.S. official said Iran, Hezbollah, and other groups backed by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps should think twice before joining the war. Again, I don't think they care. They're not afraid. Iran-backed adversaries like Lebanese Hezbollah should not question the commitment of the U.S. government to support the defense of Israel. I'm sure nobody doubts that. We believe that the folks in the region understand what those capabilities are. The White House National Security Council Coordinator John Kirby, a former U.S. Navy Rear Admiral, told reporters Monday evening. This the following just came across the wires. U.S. may deploy a second aircraft carrier near Israel, Wall Street Journal says. Why? That's just to provoke an attack. You know what that is? That's just goading Iran or someone to try and blow something up so we can justify it. And I'll be ultra skeptical if one of those aircraft carriers or any of the support vessels, because an aircraft carrier is really, it's not one vessel, it's a whole group of them. It's an entire task force. Those aircraft carriers don't go alone. So you could target any number of vessels around that, blow it up, and Iran has a whole bunch of swift boats. So it's also possible we could fake that like we did in Vietnam and just lie and say that way they blew one up so we could go over there. While there are no yet indicators that the U.S. will conduct anything other than a show of support with the naval hardware dispatched near Israel, it will certainly be in a position to conduct some level of active intervention on Israel's side if ordered by the White House. The IDF said it had mobilized 300,000 troops and declared a full siege, halting the flow of water, food, and electricity into Gaza on Monday. Technically speaking, it's kind of a war crime because they're denying civilians food and water. So they're going to create starving people. So this is day 2 of it. So tomorrow we will have people that do not have food or water for 3 days. That's going to be an issue. That's a problem. I mean, you're creating desperation, and desperate people will do just about anything for food. So Israel's in many ways right now not doing something that's going to benefit it. The arrival of the USS Ford, which is carrying an air wing and is accompanied by the guided missile cruiser USS Normandy and 4 U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, is intended to send an unmistakable warning to Iran that the militant groups it backs throughout the region not join the conflict by launching their own attacks against Israel, Biden administrative officials have said. Again, what would we do if we did that? We would just encourage them to launch all their missiles. Like between Iran and Lebanon, they could put a couple 100,000 missiles into the sky to target Israel, which would flatten them. I mean, the Iron Dome can't stop that. And so, I mean, what you see going on in Gaza right now could certainly happen if Iran and Lebanon decided to just dump their missile supplies. Syria has a decent amount as well. And they all have air forces as well. So, like, if this goes into a full-scale war, there's no reason that those nations wouldn't just say, all right, fine, we're just going to fly into territory, dump as many bombs as we can, and use them as suicide bombs after that. I mean, there would be no reason not to if Israel pushes this to the brink. So I doubt Israel would do that, and I doubt we would do that either. Again, if we launched a war against them, there's no reason not to. One of the reasons in the early Gulf War that we didn't take out Saddam was he threatened that, hey, if you attack us, like if you take me out, my last act will be to fire every Scud and every missile I have at Israel to try and provoke, a massive war with the Arabs, which is exactly what we don't want to happen. So I don't say, this is just posturing. And Biden, again, not a threat. So we'll skip past that. Now we got to come to the Republicans. Republicans in Congress continue to question Biden's unfreezing of the $6 billion for Iran. Some are calling for a refreeze in light of the Hamas attacks. Blackburn and other Republican senators wrote a letter to Biden dated October 9th, calling on him to stop the flow of the $6 billion to Iran, even though the funds are only supposed to be used for humanitarian purposes, because money's not fungible, apparently, to people. Like, I don't understand why you think that money couldn't be just used for other things. It frees up money that they were going to spend on those things, which now allows them to spend it on other things. But I guess I'm just a moron. Your administration claims these funds are only available for humanitarian use, but the money is fungible. Hey, look what I said. And there is significant risk that they could be used to further efforts by Iran or Hamas against Israel. Moreover, allowing $6 billion to flow into Iran's economy, even if the purpose is for humanitarian aid, allows the Iranian regime to reallocate even more funds to supporting terrorism. The White House response: you just laid out all the ways that Iran is complicit. Is that reason enough to refreeze the $6 billion that the U.S. helped unlock for them? Jake Sullivan, we have not yet had a dollar of that $6 billion spent, and I will leave it at that. Nice. Okay, so let's see. So the IDF has announced they've completely sealed the border with Gaza amid continued body recovery operations and assessment of the damage. This is Israel newly announced that over 1,000 Israelis have now been killed. The IDF and Israeli officials are also for the first time taking foreign journalists to the scenes where the armed raids out of Gaza took place on Sunday, including Kfar Aza, a kibbutz near the border where some 70 Jewish residents were killed. Horrific footage there. The IDF has denounced the massacre while giving foreign press a tour of the emptied out settlements. This is not war. It's not a battlefield. It's a massacre. The Major General Itai Veru was quoted as saying, you see the babies, their mothers and their fathers in their bedrooms and their protected rooms, and that's how the terrorists killed them. It's not a war. Something that I haven't ever seen in my life. We have used to imagine our grandmothers and grandfathers during the pogroms in Egypt, in Europe. It's not something we have seen in recent history. Another one, Kibbutz Be'eri, was the gruesome scene of the recovery of at least 108 bodies, while the music festival in the desert where footage of the initial Hamas invasion was captured had at least 260 bodies. Among the Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the IDF said it had killed some 1,500 in Israeli territory. These bodies are being collected too. So that tells me a couple of things. So the death toll is probably going to be considerably higher. I doubt that if they killed 1,500 terrorists, it's unlikely that the terrorists only got less than one per person. So chances are the death toll is considerably higher than what we're finding out right now, which, I mean, just already for it to be 1,000, Israel hasn't ever seen anything like that in a war. So in Israel, 1,008 people have died and over 2,600 have been injured, but assessing total casualties and also identifying the deceased has been a long, difficult process. Also under war conditions as missiles fly above. One top Netanyahu aide, Yossi Shelley, is under fire from some controversial statements to the press. Responding to questions during an interview on Channel 12 about the government's reaction time, Shelley said that, quote, the party made a not insubstantial contribution to the chaos, saying that I'm not casting blame, but sometimes there are cumulative conditions, this situation, which no one planned. Shelley said the process of identifying the fatalities and the hostages was like standing in line at the supermarket. It doesn't matter how many shop assistants there are. Sometimes it's impossible to deal with everyone. I can see why people might get a little bit upset with that because that seems a little curt, but it's the truth. Like, in this situation with, the first couple of days, there were still fighters inside. In fact, there's still most likely fighters inside of Israel that are laying low, preparing to do more ambushes. So I'm sure everybody's on edge right now. Everybody's waiting. This is why the Second Amendment is so important. Belt fed and in every home would make this a lot safer. On Tuesday, he tried to clarify the statements amid anger from the victims' families. I did not in any way intend to say that these partygoers contributed to the results of the tragic event. Yeah, he wasn't talking about them. I'm not going to go through that. He's obviously talking about the government's response. There were some failures there. In Gaza, the death toll continues to mount amid constant Israeli airstrikes and shelling. Al Jazeera is reporting the dead has reached 770. While a horrific massacre by Islamic terrorists infiltrating southern Israel played out over the weekend, a massacre of mostly civilians by the overwhelming air power of Israeli air forces ongoing in the Gaza Strip. Nearly 200,000 Gazans have been displaced at this point, and the scenes of that are pretty brutal. So this is horrific on all sides now, and we've got to find an answer. We've got to find an answer to this. So we'll go down here. So meanwhile, even though the situation in southern Israel is largely pacified under the IDF, Israel's military still believes some terrorist infiltrators are present but are hiding. A search operation by Israeli forces is still active after the majority of civilian residents from communities near Gaza have been evacuated. Hamas fighters are believed to be still hiding in some communities in southern Israel, even after the Israeli military took back control, according to the IDF spokesman, Major Doron Spielman. Quote, we are in control of the communities, but we actually assume that there are Hamas terrorists that are still hiding in these areas, including in the road where we are now. Spielman told ABC News during an interview on Monday in Sadat, Israel. In all of these communities, we've seen terrorists come out of hiding. Just yesterday, they took over an ambulance. We're still being highly careful. This is a war zone with active terrorists that are operating here. And so, yeah, that's to my expectation here is probably be a couple more days of this, because what their best bet now is to just hide out, wait for someone to ambush, and then just ambush them, fight to the death. That seems to be their goal. If they killed 1,500 inside of their borders, yeah, these were suicide fighters that were just going in there, kill as many as you can. And remember, the whole bunch of them got back too, and we don't know exactly how many made it back. So we have a whole bunch of kidnapping videos, which I'm not going to show those, obviously. So let's see. IDF reinforcements have continued to muster at the border while the ground invasion has yet to start. It is expected and likely imminent, given Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu told President Biden on Sunday that we have to go in reference to a ground operation. He further concluded that this will be a long and difficult war. Certainly would be highly beneficial for the military-industrial complex for that. We could real quickly talk about this story too. So we see that Israel told the Gazans to flee to Egypt and then bombed the only border crossing in between it. So that is yet another issue. So there's definitely some things that we can criticize Israel for. Obviously, they did not start this one, but their reaction perhaps is being a little bit disproportionate. At the same time, though, what do you react to? What do you react when you have people that come into a kibbutz, the most peaceful places you can find in the civilized world, a place where they often will send hardened criminals to live in kibbutz towns, and they end up becoming peaceful people and they leave as nice guys. They take hardened criminals and turn them into decent human beings because just something about the way they live. And these are extremely peaceful people, and you just went in and slaughtered innocent women and children. You took old people and killed them. You raped women, paraded them around, and then threw their bodies around like they were trophies. And you expect the world to show you some kind of compassion, which just is not logical. So the solution to this, Hamas really can't be a part of the solution. There has to be something. I don't know what the answer is. I used to always say two-state solution. They're kind of demonstrating that that's not an option. You cannot negotiate with people whose stated goal is your absolute annihilation. So, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon need to get involved. Let's just repatriate everyone that doesn't want to be there into one of these other countries. We can get together. I think if we're all going to spend money on this, let's spend money to stop a war, and let's find a way to just, if you guys want to support them so much and have these rallies in these other countries, take them. Take the Hamas fighters, have them be in your homes, because you can't tolerate that. So as far as I'm concerned, annihilate Hamas, occupy if you want to. It's, that's not going to be a good idea. It's going to result in a lot of dead civilians and a lot of dead soldiers on both sides. Don't see that as being a viable answer. But as long as Hamas is there, there's not going to be any peace whatsoever. So all we can do is pray for some kind of a miracle at this point. So, yeah.